All right, now a lot of you may have seen this. This is coming from health.vic.gov.au. Adolescent vaccinations outside of school and catch-up immunisation. All right, so this is in regards to consent, and what this details is the role that the government is taking to remove the role of parents in their children's lives. That's right. The government has made the decision that they know what's best for children. They know better than children's parents. Okay, I'm going to read to you. In Victoria, adolescents, including refugee and other humanitarian entrants, aged 10 to 19 years, are eligible for free vaccinations under the National Immunisation Program. Free? Is it really free? Nothing is free in life. It goes on to say, consent for vaccination, consent without a parent or guardian. You know, nobody thought we'd ever be reading something like this. It says here, the law recognises that as children become older and more mature, they are more capable of making their own decisions about a wide range of issues, including decisions about their healthcare and well-being. The law recognises that a young person may reach this stage before they are 18 years old. And that's based on who? The judgment of the government, the subjective judgment of the government. The law recognises that a young person may reach this stage before they're 18. Okay, just read that. These young people are referred to as, quote, mature minors. There is no specific age for when a young person may be deemed a mature minor. Because, of course, that's not the decision of the parents. This is becoming the decision of the government. Determining whether a young person is a mature minor requires consideration of whether they have sufficient maturity to understand the nature and effect of a decision to be vaccinated. All right, so essentially what this says is the government is proclaiming they are willing to undermine the rights of parents and are essentially looking to allow children to, quote, make their own decisions. Now, we've seen, of course, a massive propaganda campaign in favor of the vaccine that has completely ignored the other side of the story. It's ignored the data from the CDC, it's ignored the adverse reactions, and it's ignored the advice from the former chief scientist from Pfizer. I mean, this is like nothing that we've ever seen before. This is something that needs to be opposed by every Australian. Ricardo Bossi said something really interesting that I want to repeat, and that is that if 1 million people march in the streets, we win. Now, I believe our movement is growing quickly, and I think we're strong. We have a lot of momentum, so I believe that day is rapidly approaching, but the time to act is now. So make sure that you get involved, okay? This is going to take a major group effort. Head over to reignitedemocracyaustralia.com.au. You can fill out a form right there on the homepage, and there's a little checkbox section there, and you can actually choose an option as to how you would like to be involved. It could be something minor, like it could be doing letterbox drops, handing out information, or it could be you may be willing to put your hand up and take a bit more of a role in this fight, because this is absolutely crazy. What's next? You understand that this is opening up a can of worms. The government seizing children from parents, essentially. Anyway, moving on. So we saw this the other day. As it happened, Queensland doctor who administered COVID vaccine overdoses to nursing home patients not trained. Okay, so in addition to this campaign, in addition to everybody being expected to take this vaccine, despite the fact that it only has a provisional approval from the TGA, they can't even find proper trained nurses to administer whatever this is. This is absolutely more craziness. How can we trust the government to get anything right? All right, moving on. This is an article from the ABC in regards to vaccine discrimination or potential discrimination. The COVID vaccine is here. Who will be able to see if you've had it? Okay, so this is going to detail the further erosion of our privacy in regards to what drugs we choose or we don't choose to have. All right, I'm going to read to you here. New laws have just been passed mandating the recording of COVID-19 vaccine information on the Australian Immunisation Register. And by the way, the government is looking to invest a lot of money right now in the, quote, Australian Immunisation Register. They're approaching all different types of technology companies, and they're looking to develop a system whereby, of course, the Australian Immunisation Register communicates with the rollout of the COVID passports. So they're investing a lot of money into this. This is your money. This is my money. We never consented to our money being used this way. The taxpayer is being completely exploited for this government agenda. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It says here, the changes to the Australian Immunisation Register Act 2015 will mean vaccination providers, such as GP clinics, will need to report to the government who was given the COVID-19 vaccine, both within and outside of Australia. The Act introduces penalties for providers who don't comply with requests for information. Before these changes were made, the Australian Immunisation Register, which records inoculations under school-based programs and those given privately, was maintained on a voluntary basis, which is the right thing to do. This is our personal information. It should be our knowledge. We should be privy to our own personal information regarding what drugs we choose to take or what we don't choose to take. This is a matter of our privacy. The government has no right overreaching into our private lives like this. It says here, now vaccine providers will have no choice but to add personal information to the register about people's vaccination status. This information can be accessed by authorised government officials, such as, authorised officers and for health and other purposes. It says here, the federal government has also announced that Australians will be able to provide proof of vaccination through an app on their phone, like what they're doing in Israel with their so-called green passports or whatever they've called it. We see in Israel now, every day, there's less and less services, both public and private, available for citizens who have not been vaccinated. We're seeing scenes of absolute mayhem in Israel. I'm going to talk to you about that in a minute. It says here, the idea that this will allow those who have been vaccinated access to services such as air travel. It may also bestow certain privileges, such as being eligible to attend sports stadiums and theatres. Okay, there you go. There you go. We're following the global model. Will you need to prove you've had a vaccine to travel? It says here, consider an airline that refuses to carry a person who has not been vaccinated. Businesses can generally set out terms and conditions that apply to the provision of their services, but they cross the legal line in their terms or conditions if their terms or conditions discriminate against the person on the grounds of a personal attribute such as gender, race, or disability. Okay, that's stock standard. A disability can include a range of physical, medical, and psychological features that may affect a person's decision to be vaccinated. Well, it certainly is psychological. What is determining our decision to be vaccinated? It's that we refuse to submit to the fear-mongering of the government. We feel traumatized that the government is trying to mandate a vaccine upon an entire population. This is traumatizing stuff that has the capability to psychologically damage us all. So I would say yes, this is absolutely. I think every each and one of us would have a psychological reason for not going ahead with this. It says here, if an airline wanted to make a vaccination condition of a flight, it would need to have a strategy to accommodate people with disabilities who are not vaccinated, such as buying 3 seats or 2 business class seats. So there you go. No matter which way they go about it, good, decent people who don't want to be vaccinated are going to be punished, right? So either you'll be restricted from accessing these services, or you'll have to spend 2-3 times the amount of any other passenger for the privilege. All right, apparently it's a privilege now to refuse having some type of drug put into your body. All right, so I'm going to read down here in the workplace. It says, for those whose jobs requires looking after others, vaccinations could become mandatory by law. Well, in the words of our Prime Minister, he said they'd be as mandatory as they could possibly make it. It says here, in jobs that don't require close contact with other people, employers will not be able to mandate vaccinations unless new laws are passed. And you know that they're coming. You know that they're coming, and that's why we need to fire our current politicians and put people like us in office. Is that fair enough? It says here, even without such new laws, workers who are not vaccinated can reasonably expect accommodations will be made for them, such as facilitating work from home or working separately from colleagues. All right. So is that not a form of discrimination? If you don't have the vaccine, it's basically saying here you could be excluded from the workplace. You could be put in a little corner on the other side of the room. You'd have to work from home and be socially isolated from your peers, basically shut away from society. So this is what I'm saying here. You don't want to be vaccinated? All right, sit in that corner and don't come near us. You'll be excluded from participating. It says here, do you have a right to silence about vaccination? The changes to the Australian Immunisation Register Act mean your vaccine status will now be recorded at the registrar and, of course, accessible by the government, authorised health officers or whatever the hell you want to call them. And it says here under Section 11 of the Act, it's possible for a person to formally request their identifying information on the register to not be shared with others. This has the potential to provide some privacy protections for those savvy enough, and they're not going to make it easy to do this, to make the required application before their identifying information has been shared. All right, so I think this is the most important part of the article, and that is that there are supposedly some protections still left in place for your privacy. We need to explore what they are, but more importantly, we need more people in office who are willing to advocate for our privacy and our dignity. Now, I want to remind you about something here. We're going back to last year. This was from August 2020. Coronavirus Australia live news, virus vaccine won't be compulsory. And this was from Scott Morrison, this guy here. This man here is a fraudster. This man has done so much to mislead the Australian public. He made the statement, we won't hold you down and make you take it. But what he didn't tell us is that you'll be punished in every way imaginable if you choose not to. We'll make your life a living hell. You'll be socially isolated. You potentially won't be able to access certain events such as sports events, concerts, things like that, travel. Probably won't be able to access things like Medicare services, childcare, restricted from visiting our loved elderly family members in nursing homes, etc. What a deceptive piece of work this man is. Just an absolute disgrace to Australia. Scott Morrison thought that he could coerce us into submission, but instead he played a lead role, a key role in triggering what I think many of us would describe as the greatest awakening in Australian history. I don't have words to express to you how ashamed I am of this man and the fact that he's our Prime Minister.